Hi everybody, it's Martin from the Washboard Resonators. Here's a video that's been asked for by a lot of people. Two things. First of all, restringing your resonator guitar, especially with slotted headstocks. We're going to look at that. We're going to talk about strings. And the next thing is looking after these kind of metal, nickel and chrome finishes. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so here is my National Resophonic Style O guitar, and this is due a string change and a deep kind of polish. So we will go through that process now, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the beginning for you guys that might be wondering about looking after these kind of guitars. The first thing you really want to have in your case is this. It's kind of a chamois leather cloth, very cheap to buy. I have tried other things like yellow dusters or synthetic chamois leathers. They didn't really do the job as well as a real one. So I've got loads of these in every guitar case really. So what you'll see is if I just, I don't know if you can see the fingerprints here because of the light, but basically every time you play your guitar, just give it a rub down and that takes the fingerprints off. One of the worst things for these kind of finishes is is when moisture gets on it and it will darken. So you want to try and get rid of that. You can see where I've sweated on the top of the guitar. Down here somewhere, you can't see it here, but there's a little slightly darker patch where I sweated one hot day when I was playing and then left the guitar for a couple of days. And I basically, even using heavy duty polish, I couldn't polish out the slightly darker spot. You can't see it in this light, but it's very, very slight, but it is there. So really try and dry them off and get rid of the fingerprints because they may form a lasting impression through the chrome and the nickel into the brass or the material underneath. So that you want that as a starting point. The next point up is this. This is La Tromba lacquer polish, and this is the kind of stuff that's made for saxophones and trumpets. And basically, what you do with this is give a spray, take your chamois, you wipe it, and this will take off fingerprints really easily, and it also leaves a really nice kind of finish. It's slightly maybe waxy or something, but it kind of minimises fingerprints. So I tend to maybe spray that maybe every 2 or 3 or 4 gigs, something like that. The next stage up, this is something I do every 2 or 3 string changes, is I go in and actually try and clean the guitar, and I can usually polish out these kind of darker marks. I use a typical kind of chrome polish. This is Autosol. And then after I finish that, I will use some plain wax. So what we're going to do on this video is we're going to look first of all at the process of doing this, the heavy duty chrome polishing. We're going to change the strings, we're going to look at how we do that, we're going to look at how we change the slotted headstocks, and then we're going to finish the guitar up, wax it, and then there we go, we've done it. Hopefully it will help people. Took me quite a while to figure out what works for me and what products are the best ones, so hopefully this will speed up the process for a lot of you out there. So let's get into the polishing. I'm just going to take a bit of the chrome polish, put it on my typical kind of J-cloth kind of cloth, and then in we go. We don't need to spend much time on this because I think most people will get the idea, but I know some people won't. So straight away, what you'll see is that's a very quick polish there. It's coming up quite black. So basically, what I try to do is go over the entire guitar, probably 2 or 3 times maybe, just getting this heavy duty polish in. And what you'll see, that's the first one there, well hopefully you can see, is the black kind of scum that's coming out. Now you can keep going till that almost comes back without any kind of blackness on it, but you have to go for a very long time, and I don't think it really matters. And what you've got to be careful of, these kind of polishers they're quite heavy duty. So what you don't want to be doing is doing this too much, because what you'll end up doing is actually potentially ruining the finish of your National. But I find, I change strings. I mean, I'm filming this in the coronavirus now, but a typical month might be 15, 20, 25 gigs. I tend to change guitar strings on this guitar once a month. So I might chrome polish it every 3 or 4 or 5 months, depending how it's looking and what the season is. Right, so I've polished the guitar. It'll just need a very light, quick go over and wax shortly. So now we're going to look at strings. So let's just talk about strings, because there's a few kind of options there. Essentially, I kind of split my string usage into 2 very distinct camps. So on my gigging guitars, I tend to use this kind of thing. I tend to use a Diodario string. That's the EXP coated. These are the 13 gauge. So on my stylo that I use for like standard tuning, I use the 13s. Occasionally I do, in certain situations, end up tuning this for slide, and I can play that, 13s with this guitar. So I find when I'm doing that 20 odd kind of gigs a month, that lasts a month and keeps some sparkle on the strings. So those strings are fantastic. I've also, in 12 or 13 years, since I started having professionals set up my guitars, started using these, I have never snapped a string, and that was my brother's recommendation. He had a set of Diodarios on his electric guitar. He was gigging 2 or 3 times a week, and he said, I've got these strings on my guitar, they've been on over a year. He used an electric through like a Kemper kind of modelling amp, so you could just make the guitar sound amazing. So Diodarios have been fantastic. I think the best strings that are made in the world at the moment are these, Newtone. These are made in Britain, in Derbyshire, and they're handmade and they're amazing. These strings go on and sound amazing, but I don't get the kind of life out of these strings doing the amount of gigs that I'm doing. And I'd need to be changing strings probably once a week or once every 3 or 4 gigs, and I'd be changing strings all the time. But these tend to go on all my vintage instruments. I've got a lot of, you see some there, but there's more. All my sort of vintage instruments have them. If I'm recording, I might put these on. These get dealt with differently. So let's look at the restring now, and then we'll kind of figure that out. Okay, so before we take these strings off, we just want to try and keep some pressure on the cone so the guitar can't move around, and then we lose the placement of the bridge and lose the intonation that's been set up professionally in this case. So to keep some string pressure, you can do strings, different strings at different times, or keep some strings on. I tend to just do these 3 as one side of the headstock, and then these 3 as the other side of the headstock. And basically, if you I'm filming now, I'm messing about, but you should be able to do this in about 10 or 15 minutes, just restringing easily, and including the polishing, half an hour tops. Okay, so when I first got into Resonators, I nearly took my eye out. I was tuning my guitar and one of these ball ends flew out and flew past me. So what I figured out is I will take just a piece of cardboard from one of the string wrappers, twist it up, and I'll just shove it in behind the ball end there. It's just have a tendency to move. There we go. So I just shove that in, and that stops that coming out now while we're stringing. Right, so before we look at how to seat the strings, I'm going to show you a little trick that certainly helps me with tuning stability. I'm sure you're probably aware that guitars often have trouble tuning because, or keeping in tune, or when you're retuning, because things get stuck. So it could be things like the windings getting stuck in places, especially on the wood. It can happen, especially as you change strings a lot. So you can buy products. There are products you can buy that are designed for putting some lube on these places, and it really does help with stability. Since I started doing this, it really helped. This is something that a friend of mine who's a luthier told me. He basically said, you buy one of those kind of like chapstick things that you use for your lips in the winter, and you just put a little bit on with like a piece of old string. You just drop that in the slots. This I actually got given on the street, and I've had this now about 8 years. These are Diodario strings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-cut these, and then shape it to fit this thing. If you've got, if you're using other kind of brands of strings, like as an example, these Newtone strings, they you can't pre-cut those; they will unravel. So what you need to do is wrap them onto the post, and then cut them once the string's kind of on. Because we're using Diodario now, we'll just do this, we'll pre-cut them. I'll show you how we do that. Okay, so for these Diodario strings, what I tend to do is just go past by maybe 2 or 3 inches. So maybe to the, we've got 1 post, you can go past the 2nd post, maybe even to the 3rd post. Usually I find about 1.5 is about right. So I'm going to cut the string, then what I do, very lightly without pressing too hard because I don't want to cut the string, I just make a tiny little, tiny little angle on that, shove it in, get my string winder. Okay, so on any slotted headstock guitar, you want the outside strings to come in and tuck under and get as close to the inside, to the middle of the headstock as possible. That way you don't end up chewing up this part of the guitar, which a lot of guitars are very chewed up in this area because the strings kind of come across and they just eat away there. It looks really messy. Okay, so the first winding is, if you like, on the outside. It's gone the opposite way of where we want to end. So you'll see that it's tucked up against the string and it's on the other side. So it's quite hard doing this with 2 hands and trying to film. But what you'll see is that the first turn goes, if you like, on the outside of the string end that's sticking out of the post. Now it's ready to sort of wrap around on the inside. Now there's enough length on the string, because we know how much length we want, that it should end up with probably 2 turns on the inside of the string. And what you'll see is that the string, where the string sticks out of the post, basically as the string tightens, it will trap that, and this will be a very, very, very secure stringing. So this string's on slightly above pitch. I tend to just put the strings up to pitch and maybe a little touch more while I'm doing this. It seems to make it easier for the cone to settle. What I thought to do actually is show you if we were doing a new tone string on this string. We'll show that technique now you've seen how the normal Diodario technique works. I'll tell you what, while I'm filming this, I don't normally notice this crack, but it's really obvious on this film. I was playing a gig in a care home, like a kind of dementia ward, and this lady with a Zimmer frame came around the corner. My guitar was stood up while I was tuning my banjo, and she knocked it over and snapped it clean. Then I had it fixed. I could probably I could replace that, this face here. Maybe I should get round to that. So if this was a new tone string and I couldn't cut it because it would unravel, basically I would do a lot of this twisting before, but it's a bit fussy because the dangly end can then rub and scratch and stick out. So let's just have a little go at that. Okay, it's a little bit loose, so it's hard to sort of show properly. But basically what I've done is I've wrapped the string round and then put the end through the middle of the 2 wraps. There we go. So basically that's the way I like them. So I've got the 1 wrap on the opposite side to where we're aiming, and then I've got the 2 wraps on the other side, and the end is trapped. So basically then what we can do, because now we know that that's secure, I can just go ahead and it's very hard to sort of see this, but basically I can go in there and trim it. Okay, so we've done this one side. The strings are on nice and neat and tight, tuned to pitch. I've got some unwound strings here. We're going to repeat this process, bring this one across to here. They're a little bit harder because they can be a bit more slippy, these. So sometimes what I might do is maybe just cut it a bit further, do a few more turns, and then the string's really locked, you don't get any slippage. Just show a little bit of that, so I'll just get a bit of that on and drop it in the slot. Okay, so all the strings are on, and I've roughly put them to pitch in a bit more. So basically, I don't know if you can see, I've got the tuner here, but got that pad in the way. That's showing as an F. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down all the strings and just stretch them a bit, pull them up. That's gone down to E sharp. So just tune it back just past E up to sort of F a little bit. Stretch it in. And basically, if I do that on all the strings, what I find is that, yep, just careful I don't snap them here. What I find is that basically when I tune the guitar to pitch, I go basically up the strings a couple of times. It's settled. I can go to a gig, I can play the gig because of the lubrication, because of the strings being stretched in, tuning stable, and you know, I find since this guitar was set up and I do the loop thing and all that, you know, even sometimes in quite severe weather conditions, you know, you go from hot to cold and stuff, this guitar basically comes out the case in tune. You know, I can travel 4 or 5 hours to the other side of the country, get the guitar, and it's in tune. Or it's, you know, everything's 10 cents kind of sharp or flat, depending. So that's nice to have something kind of reliable. Okay, so basically, I'm going to work through this now, sort of do this in real time. Chatting on. I mean, essentially, yeah, I mean, they're basically, even after being stretched there, again, yeah, it actually found its way. Yeah. I'm happy with that. Okay, so basically, that guitar is tuned up. Now, I want to look after the new strings. So what I'm going to do very carefully, just to get rid of my finger marks from handling the guitar, I've got a little bit of chrome polish, not too much. I'm just going to give the guitar one last rub over. I'm going to stay away from the strings. I've cleaned under the old strings where the guitar body was, and I can't. Yeah, there's no fingerprints there. So basically, what I'm doing now, I mean, you can even see I did 3 passes last time. That's still coming back pretty black. But basically, I am very happy. So I've gone over the entire guitar now with polish. I'm just going to turn the cloth over. It's clean. Just working my way in, looking through the light at an angle, making sure that all of the polish is removed, because it's kind of like sometimes you miss a bit and then you're playing, you can smell like solvents. You go, what's that solvent smell? And then you realise you got a little bit on your suit or your shirt, and then the next few times you wear your suit, you smell like you've been sniffing stuff at half time that you probably shouldn't be sniffing. Right then, so we have the guitar restrung and polished. The last thing I do is get another clean bit of cloth. I'm using a triple wax. Wax. It's just a plain wax. This. I was very scared of this when I first did it, but what you'll see basically is a little bit of the wax on there. On it goes. A bit like the polish. Just go over the entire guitar. Then what I do is find another clean bit of cloth. Oh, it feels so smooth now. And this is amazing. Basically, as soon as you do this, when you do get fingerprints on your metal guitars, you will, they come off so easily, and then they don't kind of stay in the finish. So it keeps your guitar looking really clean. I've had a couple of people at I've been doing wedding gigs, and guys have come up to me and gone, "Oh, I play a guitar. I've got a guitar like that. You know, mine looks horrible. I can't get rid of the marks. How do you keep yours so clean?" And basically, I think there's a couple of things really. I think this deep kind of polish helps. The waxing definitely protects the chrome and the nickel, and then wiping down after every gig definitely helps. This stuff is basically the best. The Tromba, this is fantastic for general usage, but like I say, it won't remove deep moisture, but it's very good stuff. So I think that's it really. I think we've done it. Oh, something else I was thinking when I was restringing. I wanted to kind of give a bit of information about strings, and I said Diodario. I figured out that Diodario worked for me, and these new tone strings, which are excellent, phosphor bronze. There are also John Pierce strings, which, as far as I'm aware, are kind of equal to these. Now I've not used those for over 10 years now, but lots of people I like and know well swear by them, so I didn't want to leave them out. Of course, strings are everyone's kind of choice, and for what they cost, you know, if you're in America, $10, $8, $15, or in Britain, pounds, euros, shekels, groats. It's worth experimenting and trying. These are just what I've arrived at, and it works for me, the Diodarios, especially the coated, for the gigging instruments. And again, these new tones sound amazing. I mean, flipping heck, they're amazing. They sound really nice. On my vintage ones, the difference between them and the other strings, they just seem to make the guitar seem more three-dimensional and rich, and that's really nice. They sound beautiful from the outset as well, because they kind of go on and just sound great. Cool. Well, everybody, hopefully that helps. I've kind of rambled a bit, but I hope the information is there, and I hope the information helps. So my name is Martin Roper, and the band is the Washboard Resonators, and we're professional musicians. We live in Leeds in England, and if you found this useful, or you've enjoyed it, then subscribe below. It really helps. Find us on Facebook and Instagram. Look at some other videos, like, comment. Actually, add any information, any other kind of alternatives to this, add it below. Anything that when people kind of talk to us and like things really helps, because it means that more people see our stuff, because the internet thinks that we're relevant. So it really does help us kind of get our word out there. We play 20s and 30s kind of style music, and we love this stuff. So anything to kind of keep music live and keep music out there is great. So thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you all again. Bye-bye.